Well, to have a chat about this and all things freedom, I'm now joined by LNP Senator James McGrath. Senator McGrath, welcome to the show. It's always great to have you on. We are in the battle between liberty and authoritarianism around the place. People either want to cherish their freedoms or they're going to surrender them to those who will take them away from us.
We are, and my theory about this is that we're in our second 100-year war. The first 100-year war was between France and England, fighting over bits of France and so forth. This 100-year war is a war against tyranny, and it started off in the First World War with royal houses, invading independent neutral countries like Belgium, and then it had a further iteration with the rise of Nazism and communism, and it sort of paused in the late 80s with the Cold War sort of coming to a bit of an end, and was given a rebirth with Islamic fundamentalism. But the latest iteration is how the left have taken over the institutions, but not just public institutions. They've taken over private companies to push a certain agenda. And it is an agenda against freedom. Because often you'll find, you mentioned government before, yes, often government is the problem. What I find is dealing with some of these big companies in Australia is the biggest issue is in their sort of public relations teams, in their government relations teams. It's the people who sit around the boards of these companies who don't understand what is happening out in Middle Australia. And so they have these conversations between themselves. I spent today at the Nambour show. The Sunshine Coast Agricultural Show, left there about 5 o'clock to come down to Brisbane. And I was, talking to people, and there is this disconnect between what I call normal people who are prepared to go to the show, eat some food that's probably not great for their health, and these people who live, especially in capital cities, who don't understand how the other half live and actually despise the other half and are using their views to almost wipe out the deplorables, as Hillary Clinton called them.
Well, James, when I was in Parliament, I would often go to the boat ramps. I found talking about fishing with people let you get an insight on a whole range of different aspects of what's affecting their lives. The top end of town, the ones who sit around the boards, they don't get out of Collins Street or Noosa or the Sydney Martin Place. They talk to other people like themselves, they moralise, they lecture, and then they try and implement things that are actually against fundamental freedoms for ordinary Australians to be able to make decisions for themselves. And we see that with funding of coal mines, or the lack of funding for coal mines, the desire to shut down power stations, making power less affordable for people. We see it on boycotts for anyone that doesn't conform with a woke agenda. This is in the private sector, but it's also deeply entrenched in government now, isn't it?
It is entrenched in government. So I totally agree with that. And what I find, and people are probably going to get angry with me with this, but I'm not a fan of the welcome to country or the acknowledgement of country, because I actually find it's these white middle class people who have a certain view on life, and they get up and they do an acknowledgement of country. And I find it extremely patronising, because what it says to me is that as long as they utter some words about Indigenous Australians, then they don't have to worry about dealing with the real issues that impact Indigenous Australians: the infant mortality rate, the issue of crime in Indigenous communities, the factor of youth suicide, life expectancy. And so what you find is that these people believe that words are their deeds, rather than looking into what they're trying to do with society. And if you don't comply with their words, then you are ostracised as being, a racist or a sexist or, just a good old-fashioned bigot. And because you are then painted as being one of those ists, you are then dealt out of the conversation that is taking place in our body politic.
And so it becomes a narrowing gene pool where people are being chosen for political roles or for senior government roles or for corporate roles as well, because if you don't conform, you are frozen out of the system. Now, that's not healthy. Our entire political and competitive capitalist system is built on competition and adversarial, the nature of ideas. If we lose that, we lose a very important part of our country, don't we?
Totally. You have to look at what's happening over in England at the moment. At Oxford University, because one college there had a vote and decided not to take down the statue of Cecil Rhodes, another college has organised a boycott by the academics to not teach the students at this other college. So students are being punished because a decision was made that they've had nothing to do with. But this shows how this sort of wokeism is actually tyranny. People are being punished because of views expressed, and because what people want to do in their college is they want to explain the history. They don't want to shun it away. And whether it's happening at Oxford University, it means it's happening in universities around Australia. I think one of the greatest enemies to free speech in Australia are actually university vice-chancellors. These people are the captains of wokeism, highly paid people. You find me a vice-chancellor who earns less than $500,000 a year, you won't be able to find one of them. Highly paid individuals, and yet they lead this sort of stratified life. And what they're doing is they are slowly, it's that fifth column that they're slowly putting out students who have, as you said in your opening statement, these students have just been trained to accept this leftist orthodoxy. And
they're churning out graduates who are almost unemployable, but they've given the ticket. If you've done your basket weaving class, that's your ticket that you're a conformist and you've been indoctrinated, and that gets you into government somewhere. Senator McGrath, what can we do about it? I've got a minute left. What can we do about this? Both in a political sense or as a private citizen?
We've got to make sure we get politicians in who aren't factory clones, and we've got to make sure that we get our news from organisations like Sky. We've got to make sure we use our mobile phones and share information around, because the mainstream media aren't telling the truth. They're part of the problem. We've got to make sure that the government is held to account. And that's my role as a Senator for Queensland, is to stand up to Canberra. And if my party and my government are doing silly things, well, I'm going to call them out. We've got to have an honest, robust debate in Australia, and we've got to make sure we get Conservative governments elected at a state level and get control back of the national curriculum.
Yeah, James McGrath, wise words indeed. More strength to your arm. Thanks so much for joining me on Bernardi tonight. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Corey. Toodaloo.